Harlequins are awesome. News at 11. Hey there, welcome to OBSEC Tactics. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite armies in the 40k universe, the Harlequins. Actually quite a young race in terms of them being a playable faction by themselves. This only happened in 8th edition. Now going forward into 9th edition we're going to take a look at how the new rules affect them and what the Psychic Awakening brought them in the White Dwarf issue that gave them some new rules, tricks, relics and stratagems to play with. Let's dive in. So, 9th edition brought some big changes in terms of the rules. We've got a smaller board size, which is actually very good for the Harlequins because anything that can help us close that distance quicker is going to mean less casualties before we get into nice juicy close range combat or close range shooting. Let's not forget, the Harlequins have probably the shortest ranged gun in the game when it comes to their basic infantry. No, we're not talking about shuriken pistols. No one cares about shuriken pistols. We're talking about the fusion pistol, which is an almighty 6-inch range, strength 8 minus 4. It's basically a melter pistol, and if you're within 3 inches, you roll 2 dice and pick the highest. Although with the new rules, it does look like that's going to get changed to the new melter rules, which will be 1d6 plus 2 damage. So very brutal at close range. So being closer to the enemy is a win. I count that as a win. We've also got obscuring terrain. So now there's going to be no more, well, I can just see you through that archway. None of that. If you're behind the terrain piece and that terrain piece is 5 inches high, there is no line of sight through it unless you've got a unit that's more than 18 wounds. Laughable as a Harlequins player. We haven't got anything that's more than 7 wounds. So that's another win as far as I'm concerned. On top of that, we've got minimal Overwatch. Overwatch is now a 1 CP stratagem, which means it can only be used once per phase. So in the charge phase, you're not taking tons of Overwatch anymore. You're just taking 1 unit. Of course, there are, some armies that can change this slightly. You've got the Ultramarines with defensive focus, bringing 3 units in to fire Overwatch, or you've got the Tau, whose special rule is basically bringing in other people on Overwatch. But again, we've got mechanics and toys to turn that Overwatch off. So not a big deal for us anymore, which is great because Harlequins really are very soft and squishy. And coming up against something like a very strong squad of aggressors or Centurion Devastators with either Flamers or Hurricane Bolters or the Auto Storm Bolt Gauntlets, I think they're called. It's actually pretty scary as a Harlequin player. You've got the potential to lose an entire squad just on the way in. So another big win there. So now we talked about some of the changes. Why don't we get down to the new toys and stratagems, abilities and stuff that we've got to play with. So first of all, we've got to talk about the pivotal roles. Pivotal roles are replacement abilities for your characters. So like the Solitaire's Blitz ability, you can now change that for one of 3. For example, Shocking Emergence, which is a 3d6 charge, discarding the lowest when he comes out of Deep Strike, which is okay. I actually think the Blitz ability is probably the best one he has actually on paper, but the other 3 characters have some very strong new abilities to pick from. And with the pivotal role stratagem, we can actually keep our original ability and double up with one of the new ones. So let's take a look at some of the really good combos we can pull off. So we'll start with the Troop Master. We've got 2 worth mentioning. One is very good and one is certainly worth considering, especially if you're going to run 2 Troop Masters. First of all, we've got Prince of Light, which is a 6-inch bubble of reroll charges. Now, if he's got the Warlord trait Player of Light, which is already a reroll charge aura, he gains a +1 to charge on top of the reroll. If you spend the 1 CP and get the pivotal role stratagem on him to enable us to keep his original one, he becomes a buffing juggernaut basically. And this is all without a relic still. So he could give you +1 to charge, reroll charge, and reroll wounds in combat. If you're coming out of Deep Strike, with maybe a squad of 10 players. If you're Frozen Stars, these guys are getting 50 attacks. If they're any other master, they're getting 40 attacks. But they come out deep strike along with your Troop Master. They're then getting +1 to charge, so you only need an 8, and they're re-rolling it for free. You should get into combat, really. Assuming that you're arming them all with caresses, they will be strength 5, so wounding on 3s most likely. They'll be -2 AP, so most Marines and stuff will be saving on 5s. And there'll be 1 damage each. But with a stratagem, Murderous Entrance, we can buff that up by 1. So they'll become 2 damage each. Which means for every failed save, that's a dead Primaris. That's actually very, very good. And then he can charge in, of course, don't forget that. Twilight Fang will put him up to a strength 5, -3, flat 2 damage. And here's the icing on top. He gets an additional attack per battle round, it is. So if it's battle round 3, he gets 3 extra attacks, putting him up to 8 attacks. Very, very strong. Very, very strong. So before I get too involved in how good that relic is, let's talk about his second pivotal role, which is definitely worth considering. Darkness Bites. As soon as he's fought something, one of the things that he's fought just receives 2 mortal wounds for free. Now, I believe this can be coupled with the Fight Again stratagem. So if there's a character that you particularly want to get rid of, I like to run Sky Strider so he can get out of a transport after it's moved. But you could essentially go and target that chapter master, or maybe it's a psyker or something like that you really want to get rid of. Remember, these guys can move, advance and charge over enemy units and obstacles and don't have to worry about engagement range either. So unless they literally pack their castle as tight as they can, you can probably find a way in. Just bear in mind that other characters might be able to heroically intervene and stuff like that. What you could do is head in there, fight, assuming you survive, fight again for a total of your 10 attacks plus 4 mortal wounds. Should be enough to kill a chapter master, really. And with the Twilight Fang, I would pretty much guarantee it. Those are the 2 of the Troop Master I would definitely consider running. Makes me want to run 2 Troop Masters, tell you the truth. Next up, we've got the Shadow Seer. He's got one very, very powerful pivotal role. Definitely double up with the stratagem again and take Veil of Illusion. This is a 6-inch aura that only applies to infantry initially. But any units targeted in this aura, the enemy has to -6 inches from their range. When the start of their shooting phase, you pop Foes of the Mind, a 2 CP stratagem. It allows it to affect vehicles and bikes as well as infantry, which basically means you can deploy outside your enemy's threat range and still be 6 inches closer, which means that when it's your go, you're 6 inches closer to closing the gap and hitting them back very, very hard. So this is a very good one, and coupled with the -1 to wound aura that the Shadow Seer already gives out, you've got a very, very defensive buffing character right there. So your deployment would be Shadow Seer in the middle, everything else piled in around him. As soon as it's they find out that you're going second and your enemy's going first, as soon as it's their shooting phase, you're popping that stratagem, definitely. So that's a really, really good one as far as I'm concerned. Massively mitigates the damage you're likely to take in that first round of shooting. Next up, got Death Jester. He's got some cool stuff. Humbling Cruelty. It means when you shoot something, as long as you hit it, it cannot overwatch. Very, very, very good. Means that suddenly that unit of Flamestorm aggressors that you've been worried about charging, no longer a threat. Maybe that Riptide that's been protecting all those Fire Warriors, just tap that. Bear in mind, if the wound goes through and is saved by shield drones, it also transfers the effect onto the shield drones. So just something to consider there. But very, very powerful all the same. Next, the other Death Jester pivotal role is the Harvester of Torment. This, as long as you're firing at a squad of 6 or more, 1 hit will equal 3. Now that's okay on its own. They have 2 profiles. There's the strong 1-shot profile, and then there's a 3-shot profile, which normally has no AP on it, making it not worth doing really. But if you give this guy the Chegarath's Lament Relic Shrieker Cannon, it gets a -3 AP on both profiles. So the 3-shot profile, as long as you hit with all 3, and he's hitting on 2s, remember, suddenly that's 9 hits, strength 6, -3, 1 damage. If you're talking about chaff clearance, crowd control type stuff, clearing screens, that's very, very, very good for that. For a 45-point character, I will take that. I will take that all day long. And then, of course, on his strong profile, it's 3 hits of strength 6, -3, flat 3 damage. It's also pretty good. And then it's as long as you kill a model in that unit, they're taking -2 leadership and D3 mortal wounds, which actually works very well in conjunction with some of the other Harlequin stuff. The Shadow Seer has a psychic power called Shards of Light, which is a targetable smite. It's D3 mortal wounds and a -2 leadership debuff. That then combos very well back to the Shadow Seer's hallucinogen grenade launcher, which hits on 2s, and then you don't roll to wound or anything like that. You roll 2d6 and try and beat their leadership. Now, if they're at -4 leadership, chances are you're getting off D3 mortal wounds there, and it's very popular to run 2 Shadow Seers, so that's a very easy way to get 2 D3 mortal wounds off. It's very powerful, very powerful. And then the Solitaire. I feel the Solitaire's lost out a little bit. He has Blitz, and that's probably his best ability as far as I'm concerned. Shocking Emergence is okay. You know, you could maybe come out the webway with one of your Troop Masters that gives the reroll charges. He's got his 3d6 charge, discarding the lowest. With Blitz, he's probably getting into combat anyway. You know, you could make your charge from a few inches away and turn off the Overwatch beforehand. I'd stick with Blitz. I'm not actually the biggest fan of the Solitaire in general, to be honest. You have to give him Chegarath's Rose, really, for him to be any good, which is re-rolling failed wounds against infantry and puts him up to flat 3 damage. But I feel there's better options out there now. Let's move on. I'll leave you to decide how you want to build your army, if you want to take that Solitaire or not. But for me, it's a luxury, I would say now. Let's have a look at some of the relics now. I've discussed Chegarath's Lament, so I'm not going to do that. And we've talked about the Twilight Fang for the Troop Master, so we'll ignore that. And we'll just talk about this last one, which is a relic for the Shadow Seer. It's called the Shadow Stone. You know, real original name there. It's an extra 3 inches on his aura, or auras, because remember, we're going to spend that pivotal roll, give him another aura. I honestly think you could probably fit your whole army into this 6-inch aura around him to get both buffs. But depending on how terrain was and how the enemy have deployed, it might be nice to have that 9-inch aura. It might allow you to keep more stuff out of direct line of sight and still get the -1 to wound aura in case they've got, you know, thunderfire cannons or other stuff that can fire out of line of sight. It's worth considering. I would not say it's an auto take, but it's definitely worth consideration. So let's just talk about some of the stratagems quickly. Pivotal roll we've talked about, 1 CP. You can use it multiple times before the battle. Give your characters an extra ability. Very cool. I could see myself dropping 3 CP on this straight away, maybe 4, no problem. And now that we've got plenty of CP to play with, you know, I don't feel bad about doing that. Polychromatic Storms, 2 CP. It allows you to redeploy 3 units, but you can also use it in conjunction with Webway Assault. So if you wanted to stuff them straight into the Webway, you could. Maybe this is good if your enemy has, you know, infiltrated some units onto one side of the board and you've kind of baited them, you know, to bring out their Invictor Warsuits down one flank, and then you withdraw everything, something like that. But I can't see myself using it maybe too often. Murderous Entrance, however, I probably use every game. Means that you add 1 to the damage cast characteristic of a unit in melee. It's not a point and click instant more damage type thing. You do have to think about it a little bit on where to best maximize it. For instance, if you're going up against intercessors with damage 1 weapons, bumping them up to damage 2 means you're doubling the amount that you kill essentially for every failed save. Similarly, this works really well on Skyweavers if you want to assault something that's 3 wounds strong, like Aggressors, I don't know, for instance, or Blade Guard, 3 wounds each. What this will allow you to do is bump that up from damage 2 to damage 3, meaning that you kill 1 for every failed save. So that's very, very cool. I like that a lot. Curtain Falls, 2 CP as well. Situational, but potentially very powerful. You can move instead of consolidate. So where you would consolidate into an enemy, you basically get a free move. You can't advance as part of this. So it's probably best used on Skyweavers. You maybe turn 1, you head out, you put Twilight Pathways on them for an additional move in the Psychic phase. You get your first turn charge off, really sort of bloody the nose of the enemy. And then instead of consolidating and getting hit back like you would normally, you can you make your move behind some obscuring terrain and basically get a free hit on them, and then maybe some extra movement around nearer the back of their army or something like that. I've used it and I think it's really very helpful, but it does depend on your terrain, and you really kind of have to think about the setup as far back as deployment as to how you're going to use this. So have a think about that. Twilight Encore, 1 CP, very situational. Haven't used it yet, but I can see how it could be powerful. Only applies to your infantry, and that's probably the biggest problem here. When your enemy would fall back from you in their movement phase, you can consolidate into them another 6 inches. So when they try and fall back, you just on them again, which will stop you from being shot, 1, but you'll probably get killed in their charge phase when they just surround you and take you down with like sheer weight of attacks. But maybe if you want to stop a unit from firing, especially if they are like White Scars who've got a stratagem to fall back and fire, or Ultramarines who get it as part of their chapter tactic, that could be quite helpful. And both those chapters are really, really strong at the moment. So something to think about. And then I've included this one, although I've never used it and I don't know if I ever will. It's called Virtuoso of the Webway. As long as your character's not in combat, you can pick him up, place him into the webway in your movement phase, and then redeploy him out of Deep Strike next turn. I can see this maybe being helpful for, picking him up and sticking him on an objective to earn some primary points. Other than that, I can't see too many ways that would be good. But comment in the comment section below if you've had success with this, and let me know how you used it. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you liked it and you would like to see the rest of our videos that we're going to release on each army as they go forward into 9th and our opinions on them, then let us know. Comment below. If you liked it, hit the like button and the subscribe with the notification bell if you want to get notified about when we release videos. So I'll say good night for now, and be good to each other, keep safe, and from me and Big E, I'll see you later.